happy Wisdom Wednesday. Thank you so much for tuning in and for choosing to spend some of your time with me. I'm Milagros, and this is a little space I like to carve out to share different tips, tools, techniques, nuggets, stories, anecdotes, whatever I can that have helped me, and hopefully that will help you if implemented and used consistently to create small positive shifts in your life to move you to new levels of healthy and happy, whatever that means at this time in your life, even if it's 1 degree at a time, because the reality is that the most sustainable change happens in the smaller spurts over time, right? And it's the consistency of it that creates the change. So last week, I sent out a video that was about using a self-care mindset. The week before, I sent out a video that was really about understanding that our feelings are meant to be information. We're not necessarily meant to make information based on our feelings, but it's to help inform us about where we are, what our perception of whatever the situation or the person or the thing is, so that we can continue to grow and become evolved as people, right? If I hear someone say something and my feelings are hurt and no one else's feelings are hurt in the room, well, it's not the person's fault who said it. It's mine. What is it about my filters, my experiences, my stuff that allowed me to receive that information in that way? And why did I take it so personal? Right? So that information is for me. Now, there's also a piece of that we need to remember, that if there is someone who is intentionally causing us harm, whether doing it through words and hurting our feelings or doing it in other ways, we have the right to back out of that relationship or run out of that relationship, because it's not a healthy place for us to be. So looking at, and I've talked about this previously as well, looking at the patterns versus the potential. We want to hold the person's potential. Absolutely, we know what they're capable of being, or we have seen a glimmer of who they can be, or we have experienced that person, but we only experience that person once a month after a huge fight, when I say I'm about to leave, right? Or something like that. If that is the case, then you are holding on to the potential and choosing to ignore the patterns. It is the patterns that we must pay attention to. And if the pattern is to continuously hurt you, feelings or otherwise, you have to choose whether or not you're going to continue to participate in a relationship that is causing you harm. So when we talk about harm, this week I want to talk about this idea of pain and suffering and the knowing that we have to work through it. The only way out is through. You've probably heard that before. The only way out is through. If you think about a cave and you're in a dark cave, the only way to get out of the cave is to work your way through the cave to find the light, right? When I think about my own some of my own personal stories, I recognize that I do have a pattern of working through the pain. And I have become kinder to myself, recognizing that working through pain is a process for sure. So it will look different depending on the situation and depending on where I'm at in my life. When I was younger, something that would have caused me pain, I would have sat in a lot longer, because I would have believed that I was deserving and worthy of that hurt, or because, whatever sabotaging story I might have been telling myself at that time. Now I'm in a healthier place, so I recognize I don't have to stay here. Pain is information. I know people look at me sideways when I say that, and it's not a very popular opinion, but pain is information. If I feel a pain in my leg, that is information. I could lay on the floor and writhe around holding onto my leg and crying for days on end about my leg, or I could use that information to find the source and do something about it, thereby alleviating the pain. I've heard someone say before, and I don't remember who it was, but pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. And I thought, ooh, people don't want to hear it. People don't want to hear it, because we have become conditioned in believing that we're supposed to suffer, and we also bond off of our suffering, right? We bond off of our woe to me stories. And yep, that's another video for another day. So in talking about pain and working through the pain, I want to share a couple of tips that I have used that help me to really get myself through it. The first is this: we have to acknowledge the pain. Right? If my leg is hurting, I have to acknowledge that I have a pain in my leg. And that it's almost twofold. I have to acknowledge that I'm not exempt to pain. there are going to be times and opportunities in my life where I'm going to feel pain physically, emotionally, or otherwise. And that when I actually do feel the pain, I have to acknowledge what is happening. Give it a name. If it's a physical thing, you find it in your body and you're like, oh, yep, I feel this pain and I think it's originating in my hip. The more information that we have, especially if we're working in collaboration with someone else to help us find the source of that, the better it is for everyone to find the source of that, right? If it's emotional, I have to name it. This is frustration. That's that pain. This is sadness. That's that pain. This is fill in the blank. We have to name the pain, because once we name it, now there's almost like an opportunity to engage with it when I know what it's called. If I feel, being that I had an accident when I was younger and I deal with some residual back stuff, if I feel a pain in my back, I know, because I've been doing this so long with my body and I'm in relationship with my body, where the pain is, I know exactly what's happening. And I'm like, oh, I need to stretch more. Oh, I need to drink more water. Oh, I need to like get down and do some yoga poses and really get into some binds and twist out this pain. Or I need to stretch my legs, or I need to move my body. And I know what it is, but I would not be in this place of knowing had I not been willing to engage with the pain. So we have to be willing to engage with it, because you know the saying, what you resist will persist, right? So you got to face it. I sometimes like to think of it as a separate person. And like, as it steps out of me, I'm like, I see you. Let's have this dialogue. Let's have this conversation. Let's work through this, because you're not staying, right? You're a temporary visitor. And then when we do that, when we're willing to engage with the pain, then the next thing is to really question, what is this? What is this teaching me? What is the source of this? What am I supposed to learn from this, right? I had recently a situation, again, physically, and I knew when I felt the pain, I was like, okay, I'm not doing my neck thing the way I'm supposed to do every day. I've been carving off a few minutes, and one time carving off a few minutes, not a big deal. Consistently carving off a few minutes, that pain is talking to me, right? And so I question it, like, what is it that you're trying to show me, teach me? And the more that we have these dialogues with our mind, with our emotions, with our bodies, the faster we're able to get to a place of actually learning and expanding in terms of our relationship with whatever is happening, right? And then the next thing, obviously, is to listen for the answers and be open to hearing what it is that our bodies, our emotions are trying to say. We don't always want to hear it. If it's an emotional thing, and I know every time I spend time with this particular person, I walk away feeling some kind of way. I'm going to use my feelings as information. What is this telling me? Right? And you might not get the information, or rather the answers right away, but by being in relationship with the pain and asking it and just sitting with it. This feels like sadness. Why does this feel so sad? And then being open to listening to the answers, like, I can tell this relationship is coming to an end. Ooh, and then you don't want to, sometimes it's like that is harder, but holding on is worse, right? It feels like staying in the relationship will be really detrimental, but letting go feels hard, and then honoring all those parts of ourselves. The other thing that I would recommend is that when we are dealing with and experiencing pain, really just honor it for what it is. A lot of times we tend to make it like the worst thing in the world ever, forever, and always. And if we learn how to isolate and make that, like if I have a hip pain, it's a hip pain. Stop putting it in my back and stop putting it in my neck, which I used to do to myself. Oh, now I can feel this. Oh, now it's this. If I had an emotional pain or something that hurt my feelings, or, something along those lines, I would make it out to be powerful enough to create ripples in my entire life. So rather than minimize it, which we're not going to do, we're going to acknowledge it. We're going to give it a name. We're going to call it out. We're going to engage with it. We're going to talk to it and question it and listen for the answers. But I'm also not going to give it more power than it deserves, and I'm not going to make it bigger than what it deserves to be. And then finally, sitting in a space where once we figure out the information, or maybe we don't, doing our best practices to take care of ourselves. So if I know that this relationship is not healthy for me, then the best practice for myself is to either have a conversation if our relationship is as of such that I can, or just allow that relationship to kind of fizzle out, right? Because we can participate in allowing it to fizzle out. We always do. When relationships fizzle out, guaranteed it was a participation. You probably didn't consciously say, I'm going to let this fizzle out, but by not participating in the relationship in the same way, it fizzles out, right? So I can choose to let this fizzle out, or I can choose to find the source and do something about it, or I can create different dynamics in my life to eliminate and or prevent the pain from ever coming back if it's something physical or even emotional, right? And then finally, when it comes to emotional pain, I just want to remind you that a lot of times we tend to take things personal that aren't ours. That's it. They're not ours. And when we learn to not take things personal and to recognize that not everybody on the planet is going to be operating in our best interest, and people are really thinking about themselves and what is going to benefit them. And if they are used to manipulative practices, why would you think that you're any different when that's what has always gained for them, right? In some perspective or another, humans do not repeat behaviors that don't have a payoff. So if they have a gain there, why would you pretend that you are the exception and then get mad when you're not? So it's again, that would be an awareness if we're watching the pattern, right? So letting ourselves really just kind of honor what is and not taking on the drama and the stuff that belongs to other people, and not taking it personal when they don't behave, act, or speak the way that we want them to. I decided a while ago that I was not going to continue to let my joy and my happiness and or my health, mental, emotional, physical, and otherwise, be contingent on other people behaving or misbehaving. Now, there are some misbehaviors that do affect me for sure, and I'm not saying that it lets them off of the hook. But I'm also going to take responsibility for how much am I participating in the drama that's feeding that, and how much am I bringing my energy into this space when I could take my energy and go elsewhere, right? I could take my energy and recalibrate to my joy, my health, and my happiness. And the more that I do that, the less likely I am to participate in that stuff that isn't healthy or serving me. That's a lot. I feel like I could talk about this for hours on end, and it's in response to a question that I got about what's the best way to deal with emotional pain. And I said, you got to get through it and give yourself room, because it is a process. And if it's something that you have experienced before, you might find that the next time around it's easier, or not, because you're different and you're always evolving and life is always changing. And sometimes we have a situation that it can seems to be on repeat, and as it's on repeat, if we're not learning from it, it feels harder and harder and harder each time. So just really give yourself the opportunity and the room to process at your own pace, and not try to fast forward your process through the pain, because that's not healthy either, and it ends up just kind of blowing up in our face, right? So what we resist will persist. When you feel pain, emotional, physical, or otherwise, acknowledge it. Acknowledge that you're going to feel pain because you're having a human experience. Acknowledge the pain and give it a name, okay? And then really give yourself the opportunity to kind of question the pain. What is it, to engage with it, right? Question it. What is it that I'm supposed to be learning here? What is the lesson? What are you trying to teach me? What do I need to know about the situation? Listening for the answers, and then doing something, taking steps with that action. With action to actually remedy that part for yourself, what you can handle, because we can't control other people, right? So I have to take care of what I know I can take care of for me. And then remembering to not give it too much power, so that it is what it is, without making it too big and without minimizing it either. Honor it for what it is. And then finally, giving ourselves the opportunity to do the work, whatever that means, to allow ourselves to transmute and release the pain. So that's what I have. It's a lot, Lord, it's a lot. And it's not for everybody, because not everybody is in a place where they're ready to work on and deal with those pain points, because there is a payoff to staying in that place. That's very real. There is a payoff. We do not repeat behaviors that don't have a payoff. And if you are looking at a specific arena or space of your life and you're going, I want this to be different, but I keep repeating these same patterns, then it might be a really great time for you to either get a coach or to get a therapist to help you work through why you're doing the same patterns, and to put some techniques in place of those old patterns so that you can start to create those shifts. So that's all I have. I'm sending you light and love. I hope that was helpful. Let me know what you think. I'll see you next week. Peace.